बुलाना तो चाहिए।
Good morning and warm welcome to this brainstorming session, a very important session on hydropower and harnessing PSP potential. Uh, Honorable Secretary Power Pankaj Agrawal ji, all dignitaries, August Assembly of experts from industry, senior officers from various states, delegates, fraternity at large, connected through web links, and students, if any, and last but not the least, colleagues from Central Electricity Authority and Honorable Chairman Sir Ghanshyam Prasad ji. Human race recognized the power of water and used it in water mills. But as far as the modern turbines are concerned, we had James Francis in 1849, and the Francis turbines continues to remain the main turbine. Later on, the Pelton in 1880 and Kaplan in 1913. Gradually, the hydropower came out to be one of the great contributors in this. And although first power plants were in England in 1878 and 1882 in USA, as far as our own beloved country is concerned, although we were under the British rule, but India was not left behind. And in 1897, we had the first power plant, although very modest beginning, of 2 into 65 kilowatt in Sidrapong, that is in Darjeeling. India, historically, if we see at the time of independence, we had a very limited capacity of 1362 megawatts as far as installed capacity, and hydro contributed about 508 megawatts. And our even per capita consumption of electricity was only 1/6. From there on, we have moved in a big way. Right now, as far as hydro capacity is concerned, we are close to 47 gigawatts, and we rank fifth in the world. After China, as Honorable Shahi Saab said, China has gone great guns in hydropower development. They have about 421 gigawatts, followed by Brazil and USA, which is more than 100 gigawatts. And Canada also is 83 gigawatts. Now it is time that we are already lagging behind in hydro, because at the time of independence, we are about 40% contribution. Thereon, the journey, we came to 25%, and now we are only 10.4%. The contribution about the CPSUs is about 15 gigawatts. The states contribute 27. The private sector about 4 gigawatt, and small hydro is a separate category. It is about 5 gigawatts. The major projects in the big size, because now we will have, as far as the conventional hydro is concerned, we will have to go for major projects, that is storage dams, because that is the need of the hour. Three gorges in China, about 22 gigawatts, Itaipu, about 14 gigawatt in Brazil. Then again, Zilaudu and China, about 13 gigawatts. Belmonte, again 11 gigawatts, and Guri, again 10 gigawatts. Now, I think the time has come that our country should also find a place in such coveted list where a single plant can give more than 10 gigawatts. Recently, Upper Siang has a capacity of about 11,200 to 11,600 megawatts on a tributary of Brahmaputra, with a storage of about 9 BCM, billion cubic meters, and energy about more than 40,000 MUs.
चेयरमैन साहब कहती ट्रंकेट करवाइए क्योंकि सेक्रेटरी पावर के पास टाइम कम है असुचाम का प्रेजेंटेशन देखने के लिए.
Okay, okay, fine. Attributes of hydropower are well known. I think I may need not repeat it. So, as far as PSP is concerned, our capacity is only 4.74 gigawatts. And intermittency of solar and wind in the energy landscape, PSPs are very critical and important in energy demand management. CA has taken a very lead role in recently approving about 4 PSPs, about 2000 megawatt on Sharavati, 600 on Upper Indravati, 1500 megawatt on Bhavali, and 1000 megawatt Bhivpuri. So, Ministry of Power also has taken a lot of efforts in promotion of hydro, and they are well known. Enabling infrastructure was one of them. Then waiver of ISTS transmission lines, HPOs, and recently great step by Government of India by contribution of equity of 24% in the Northeast with a 750 crore per project and total 4136 crores. CA also aims to clear the concurrence 2 PSPs every month on an average basis. And this will lead a path because what we need today is large storage dams as a conventional hydro and PSPs. So what we need is about 87 gigawatts of conventional and PSP of at least 79 gigawatts by 2047 to ensure 24/7 supply because we don't want to curtail anything. And a great opportunity exists for development of PSPs, which is very little harnessed because out of say 180 plus the potential, what we have harnessed is hardly 4.77. So the country is progressing by leaps and bounds on infrastructure sector, and PSPs and hydro is the need of the hour. What we see in the landscape that private sector developers have taken a lead in developing PSPs, and timelines of completion are very encouraging, about 4 years, and is a sigh of relief for a sector which is known for time and cost overruns. CPSUs and state PSUs also need to capture the slice of cake and avail the great opportunity in PSP without compromising on conventional hydro development, because that is also very important that we need to see. The pains, the bottlenecks, and the issues of hydros, and including PSPs, are well known. What is now required is we need solutions in the form of actionable points instead of simply highlighting all the issues. History will not forgive us if we do not rise to this occasion because now it is very, very urgent. With rapid strides in solar and wind, quantum jump in capacity addition in conventional hydro and PSPs has now become a question of perform or perish. The brainstorming session and the collective wisdom of galaxy of experts and professionals in this field will bring forth innovative ideas, key ingredients, solutions for simplifying the processes, the optimization, and most importantly, the key takeaways and recommendations or action plans to achieve the milestones. One important thing that as far as the viability of hydro is concerned, a lot of work on financial engineering has already been done. But on engineering side also, especially the upstream projects, because normally the hydro projects are tailor-made, but as far as upstream closed loop PSPs are concerned, what we need to do is some kind of a standardization so that the PSP based on unit size and head and commensurate dams, water conductor systems, and power stations, we need to come up with some good ideas about standardizing, say 10 designs, so that quickly those things are applied and we are able to reduce the cost of execution as far as and reducing the time as well. Last, today is 14th October, second Monday of October, which is celebrated as Columbus Day in USA. It is also celebrated as Indigenous Day. So we all know about these things, but thus taking the clues from this, let us explore the actionable points and a concrete plan how to improve and fast execution of hydro and PSPs within a viability with emphasis on indigenous, that is make in India. Thank you.
Thank you, Shri Gokhale. We'd request you to please take your seat. Please take your seat. Thank you for very holistically setting the context for what is to follow. And now we'd request Shri Prabir Niyogi to please come up. Shri Prabir Niyogi, advisor at GMR and Asocham Energy Vertical. Let's hear it for all our panelists. Let's hear it for them as they come up on stage. We have Shri Rajkumar Chaudhary, Chairman and Managing Director, NHPC. Shri R.K. Vishnoi, Chairman and Managing Director, Tehri Hydro Development Corporation Limited, THDC. Ms. Nivedita Mishra, Special Secretary, Department of Energy, Government of Odisha. Ms. Nivedita Mishra. Shri Milan Ganesh Gokhale, Member Hydro, CEA. Dr. Saibal Ghosh, Deputy Director General, GSI. Shri Pankaj Kulshrestha, Executive Director, Uttarakhand Jal Vidyut Nigam Limited. They will provide us the government perspective. And now, to represent the industry viewpoint, we'd have Shri Naresh Telugu, COO, Hydro and PSP Adani Group. Let the applause continue in the same vein. Shri Gyan Bhadra Kumar, Whole-Time Director, JSW Hydro. Shri Rahul Vashne, former country head, StarCraft, and advisor, Asocham National Council on Hydropower and PSW. Shri Nitin Sabiki, Senior Vice President and Head, Hydro and Energy Markets Renew. We see on our right-hand side, the applauses are just dying down. Can we have them louder? Shri PM Nanda, Executive Vice President, Greenco Group. Shri Kalachand Mahalik, Head Hydro and PSP Torrent Power. We are also joined by Shri Som Parkash Bansal, Head Projects Hydro and PSP Avada Group. And Shri Prabhakar C. Kale, Head Hydro and PSP Tata Power. And now to deepen our understanding of the path forward, we shall at the onset have a strategy deck presentation. So we are excited to ask Shri Rahul Vashne, former country head, StarCraft and advisor, Asocham National Council on Hydropower and PSP, to get started with his presentation.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's both an honor and privilege to welcome you all in this Vision 2047 presentation and focusing on pivotal role on hydro and pump storage projects. Distinguished guests, esteemed colleagues, member on the dais, Shri Agrawalji, Secretary Power, Ghanshyamji. It's important to kind of go through some of the issues as well as what opportunities these pump storage projects and hydropower projects bring to the fore. With Asocham, the industry actually kind of sat down together and really deliberated on how can we bring to the fore the best things forward, and how can we expedite the growth and development of this particular technology. So first, I will kind of take you through some of the statistics and data. I think you know most of it, but still it would be important to kind of highlight that we are growing at a very fast rate, 453 gigawatt now, and the major growth is coming through renewables. And it's exciting to say that solar and wind are contributing significant capacity additions year on year. Uh, it's also kind of important to realize that wind has surpassed even the hydro capacity now, just standalone, which makes almost 200 gigawatt of renewable energy capacity out of 453 gigawatt of total capacity, which means we are very close to the target of 50% through non-fossil sources by 2030. And we are also kind of have an ambitious target still with 500 gigawatt of generation capacity from non-fossil fuel by 2030. So there is, of course, a lot to be done going forward. Uh, if you look at pumped hydro and hydropower potential, and it's kind of split into zone wise. However, we have around 133 gigawatt of hydro potential, and we have harnessed just 32% out of it at this point in time. While 14 gigawatt is still in the construction, and there are significant number of projects, around 41 gigawatt, which is in the pipeline in various stages of DPR and survey and investigation stages. So the hydropower capacity, and when you look at the Amrit Kal targets, which is so very important, and as it is said that Amrit Kal, whatever we do will be reflective of the next 1,000 years. I think it's important to see what we can do and how we can achieve the significant growth and ramp up these capacities. And the target, of course, is 55 gigawatt by 2030 and 87 gigawatt by 2047 for hydro projects. Similarly, on the pump storage side, it's very ambitious. Presently with 4.7 gigawatt, we are talking about 79 gigawatt by 2047, which is a big jump from what it is now. And of course, hydropower and pump storage, everybody knows the advantages and utilities around, on these two technologies. But of course, it significantly ramps up in terms of job creation as well. But of course, if you look at hydropower capacities, India is one of the key markets for hydropower capacity addition. We have just harnessed 32% with a global, almost 1,500 gigawatt of capacity available globally through hydropower. I think India and Brazil and some of the South African markets are the only markets left where there is still significant capacity which needs to be added going forward. So I think this is an important sector. While if you look at from the past perspective, we haven't added very significant capacities over the years in hydropower specifically. So it has been very slow. But this is the time probably we can do something around it and increase the capacity addition. Of course, there are challenges. One thing which specifically the private sector looked at is financial viability or commercial viability of any hydro project. And what it has been highlighted time and again is the hydropower is very important, but it has been marred with significant challenges with respect to the other levies which has been imposed on hydropower, which makes it fairly expensive. So, of course, we all know it's long-term, predictable, reliable, sustainable, and critical for grid resilience as a technology. But at the plant level, when it comes to the brass tacks of commercial viability, I think there are some challenges around that. So you can see the comparison around it. While pump storage projects, of course, it's in conjunction with the hydropower project, and it's a flexible solution. It's like a time shift. It's like a battery storing the power during the daytime and kind of catering to the peak power requirement. Uh, the capacity has been, or the potential has been kind of significantly increasing. It's due to self-identified routes throughout the country, and it is also kind of situated in plain lands and not in Himalayan, sub-Himalayan regions as well, which means there is some ease of construction as well on that particular front. I mean, as of now, 12 states are kind of having a major PSP potential and are showing keen interest, while the other states have not picked up. While you can see that 58% of PSP potential is yet to be utilized as of now. But how can we fast track and the PSP and hydro development is the question. And for that, we need to also understand what is the risk and identification of risk and the impact because of those risks. And also, some of the things which add on to time and cost is to the project. And if we want to fast track this project is expediting approvals and permits, having policy cohesion and also providing support and incentives like it was for solar when it was being sold at 17 rupees. And of course, coupled with it, the market mechanism, because no wonder whatever you do, hydro projects or pump storage will have an additional cost. It has a cost of converting the power from daytime to then evening peak, and therefore you need certain incentives in order to make that happen. And given that the market mechanisms does not really provide for that benefit around it, there is something which needs to be done. And then, of course, it's about capacity building. I think it's important to see the risk picture in a hydro project, and when we talk about risk, the rewards has to be commensurate to the risk. And as we all know that hydro projects are the most infrastructure intensive high risk value creation, there are many risks which you have to really take care about. And there are certain risks which are, for instance, natural calamities, which relates to weather, volcanic or seismic activities. And of late there is a substantial increase in extreme weather conditions as well. So this needs to be catered to when you are developing or making ambitious plans in terms of having these projects come in place. So there are a host of risks, and each of these risks have to be mitigated. There is a cost and time for that particular mitigation, and it has therefore a cost and time impact around it. The more we kind of look at in detail these particular projects, and therefore we would be able to kind of do a much better job if there is advanced planning and understanding of all of this. What we as an industry kind of through ASSOCHAM did was trying to highlight what are the other ways in which we can expedite uh, you know uh, hydro and pump storage projects, and these are some of the key split when it comes to the projects, wherein first is of course expediting DPR preparation, which we are targeting at around 600 plus days in terms of DPR preparation time, but this is also after survey and investigation is carried out. So, there has to be some, areas where we look at simplified concurrences processes, because there are certain processes where, one thing has to be completed prior to the other thing in a different ministry or a department, which would, need to be catered for. So there is, and CA is continuously working on making it more simpler and better. But the idea should be, and if we want to really take up big projects, is that this process limits itself to safety related issues and safety parameter monitoring, also of course about environmental aspects. That could also mean that we can have empaneled experts which can do the job if we have capacity constraints or skill constraints. And of course, when it comes to testing and other activities, other premier institutions like IITs and others can be also roped in order to make things work. And as I said, in terms of understanding the process and whether we need it or not is also something which needs to be worked upon, where there is a definite checklist which is taken care about, and which really works on stability and safety and design aspects of the project. And we know exactly which ones can be postponed post DPR as well, or maybe after DPR concurrence processes as well. And certain tests, as I said, trial, for instance, example, a triaxial or shear test, which requires a prior forest clearance, where it becomes a chicken and egg story, which one to do first or which one to do last. And last but not the least, of course, in this category is expediting, the monitoring activity, where, private sector in participation can also be kind of looked at. The same is, of course, on the environmental and forest clearances aspect. There are, some things which can be further improved in terms of environment clearances and forest clearances as well, where compensatory afforestation land is already a part of stage 2 application and not stage 1 application. I mean, it's already in part of stage 1, but it should be on the stage 2 part. And so there are many such issues which we can deliberate here as well going forward to see what can be best done in terms of expediting these activities. Um, Also, a pre-approved framework for common issues. Um, some of the things, of course, that is on implementation of PSP guidelines. Like central government has come with the PSP guidelines, but again, different states have different implementation still, and there is a lot to be done in terms of state and the center kind of coming together as a. It's more like a cooperative federalism, which should work going forward. So there are certain aspects, and also to understand that a self-identified closed loop pump storage projects is very like an typical industry, a factory for that matter. So it's important to say that whether do we need to go through all the grind on that. Uh, Again, some of the states are implementing some, upfront premium or a registration fee or an electricity duty, others on the pump storage project. So I think that's important to be done away with in order to expedite, allocation process. And of course, it should be treated at par with the battery, given that it just does the time shift primarily. Again, GST concession for PSPs, it's still very high, given that hydro and PSP would attract the same GST. They are higher than traditional solar and wind projects, and at least if not specific, waiver or reduction of this, some of the things which could be looked at or should be looked at is, bringing it at par with renewables. And given that we are talking about a significant ramp up of capacity, and we are talking about predictability as well when it comes to somebody taking up a large investment now in order to complete these projects. So all the policies uh, kind of should be on a long term basis. They should look at 15, 20 years as a minimum, so that the developers have a clear picture and horizon around it. And for instance, the transmission line charges waiver is only up to 2025. If it's kind of extended to a longer duration, that will help facilitate, and it's based on construction work award. So if we are planning that majority of pump storage projects are coming from 2030 to 2047, then of course something has to be looked into in terms of transmission charges, because either the developer considers that right now, or you know and it will affect the viability of the project or otherwise. And there are of course water allocation issues, which are state level challenges. Again, policy initiatives for promotion of PSPs, uh, equity permitting equity transfer is something, and transfer of permission or clearances from SPV to the affiliate. These are basically company nor related aspects which come in the way of getting a new investor into the project, or having a partnership or a joint venture around it. Long-term financing would be another one. The major, of course, is, as I said, market development, which is key, and the market and regulatory framework. The whole USP of hydro and pump storage projects are that they are able to supply power at the evening peak, and which, if you look at the exchange, there is a significant price gap between the daytime power and the peak time power. However, unless realized the differential, these capacities won't be able to come to the market. So I think there is something on the regulatory market and the market participation rules, maybe on or capacity contracts would be one of the areas to look into, in order to clearly give a revenue side horizon to an investor or a developer. It's kind of important that such market mechanisms also come into picture. Similarly, of course, when you talk about hydro recs, uh, way back in 2019 when HPO, hydro purchase obligation, or hydro recs were announced. The intention was that to facilitate hydropower through additional compensation, like it was when solar was struggling in terms of solar rec and RPO obligations there. So, but how, from that time till now, it's been, the dates have been kind of changed, quite frequently, but also the it has been made fungible, which means it can be on the non-solar category. So anybody with a wind project can also and somebody buying power from the wind project can also cater to or complete his hydro purchase obligation primarily. And contract for difference would be kind of extremely important going forward, considering, again, the market mechanisms which are in store. Ancillary services, which is a key element, is also some of those activities. I'll skip some of them. Again, moving to just the hydropower part of it. Free power to states, which add on to the cost, as you have seen in the graph. GST for hydro as well. Water cess have been, some of the states have been trying, but central government have been very strong around it. Again, enabling infrastructure grant has been introduced in 2019, and that's been a continuous effort from the government. But again, there are certain challenges with respect to getting that infrastructure grant. If you are having a merchant plant, probably you will never be able to get this grant. And recently some of the additional elements have been added in terms of infrastructure grant, but probably there is a possibility to enhance further. Allocation processes, transmission line. So these are some of the other issues which kind of mar the hydropower projects and its quick, taken up by the various state public sector undertakings or private sector. But it's more on the private sector, which is reflective of the fact that hydropower projects are virtually dried up in the power sector. But of course, pump storage projects, there is a significant ramp up in terms of interest in the pump storage side of it. And recently, of course, some of the elements are on acts of God as well, where insurance or reinsurance have ceased to offer coverage for acts of God because of some of the severe climate conditions, severe accidents which has happened in the past. So, as in the main advantages, of course, for the hydropower and pump storage are its versatile, scalable resource for the grid. It provides grid support services. It provides backup, spinning reserve. It provides flexibility, which is required by the grid. It's from peak to diurnal. Otherwise, it can be operated on part load, full load, quick start and stop provisions. It also provides the necessary inertia for the grid. And like primary response services, frequency variations, etc. Uh, Pump storage projects can, and even hydro with diurnal storage, provide the storage solution which is required, which means providing power in the peak side. It can provide for reactive power compensation. So there are a lot of elements where these are not valued, and the grid, the nation, the technology, and you know the viability elements around it needs these very elements in order to make the project come forth. They do require, in terms of commercialization, in terms of having a value around it. And PSP additionally supports RE integration. I mean, this is very important, that if 50 gigawatt of solar power goes off in the evening, what will compensate that? So that's probably, and since solar is growing significantly and we have a 1200 gigawatt target till 2047, I think that's very important. So I think that was, kind of setting up some of the issues and challenges, and also kind of talking about the opportunities which are in ahead of us. And I think our vision is not just to have energy independence. It's about embracing a future which is where energy is produced substantial. I mean, through a sustainable and equitable form. So I think those are very important. And in, the hydro and pump storage projects will lead the innovation going forward, and they will create jobs, they will foster economic growth, and also improve the quality of life. Uh, so, these two technologies would facilitate, uh, you know, RE integration, and that's what is also very important, still remains the cheapest form of power. So, thank you very much. I urge every one of you to have a constructive discussion going forward, and the insights will help in terms of bringing forth some of the key challenges and issues which need to be addressed right now and right away. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shivashni, for outlining critical strategies and actionable insights. With this, we hand over the panel discussion to our moderator, Shri Prabir Niyogi.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Yeah. So let's kick off the panel discussion straight away in the interest of time. And we are indeed grateful for Mr. Agarwal to be present here as Secretary Power and Mr. Prasad, Chairman CEA. And in the context of today's discussions, let me try and do some framing. First is, as a sector, we are at the crossroads of achieving energy transition as well as ensuring energy security. So, what role hydro and PSP should have in such context? Secondly, see, we have huge potential in the country which remains untapped. And as per statistics, it's just about 32% of hydro capacity which we have installed, and just about 2.6% of PSP capacity that we have been on the ground today. Third is, the targets are quite lofty, ambitious, and in line with our own Amritkal targets as a nation. So it's going to be 87 gigawatts in 2047. It's going to be roughly around 27 gigawatts of PSP capacity as per National Electricity Plan in 2032. And even if we look at the short-term targets of capacity addition of 40 gigawatts this current financial year, hydro's contribution is going to be 3 gigawatts. So these are quite tall tasks. We have the short-term, medium-term, as well as the long-term targets. So in such backdrop, what has been happening in the sector in terms of policy initiatives and institutional strengthening? We have very recently seen how the scope of infra support has been expanded to include transmission network connectivity, to include communication networks, to include ropeways, and to include railway sidings over and above roads and bridges, which are absolutely necessary for kicking off a hydro project. Two, we have also found institutional robustness in expediting clearances and approvals and having DPR appraisal time bound. Third, there is also an ISTS waiver which is in place, subject, of course, the projects being commissioned or reaching a milestone by a target date. So in such background then, let's start the panel discussion. The questions before us are: what challenges we face as planners, as policymakers, as decision makers, as developers? What changes we need in respect of the fiscal regime of taxes and benefits, in respect of the market design, which will strengthen and improve the positioning of PSPs as a resource, and of course, what revenue streams are to be guaranteed and stabilized in order to make projects bankable. So in such background, let me first start with Mr. Chowdhury. So Mr. Chowdhury, you have been at the front of scaling up your hydro ambitions. So how do you see the targets moving forward what challenges you face, how you are overcoming them, and eventually what would you see as an independent developer? That this is the track I need to I need to invest. So, Mr. Chaudhary.
Thank you, Mr. Nyogi. Yes, for hydropower development and PSP, as explained earlier, it is the need of the hour. With the scaling up of capacity addition of renewable energy sources, solar and wind, now the importance of capacity addition from hydropower and PSP are inevitable. With a lot of efforts, and so far we have added only 42 gigawatt of hydropower and pumped storage only 4.7 gigawatt. Hydropower, we have the potential of 133 gigawatt. So majority of the potential is untapped. And from this untapped potential, the majority lies in northeastern states, especially Arunachal Pradesh. If we go back, the many hydro projects during our late Honorable Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee ji, 50,000 megawatt hydropower initiative. That time our Honorable former Secretary Power, Sri R.B. Sahi ji was there in the Ministry of Power. A lot of pre-feasibility reports were prepared and by the CPSUs. But lately, these projects were handed over to the various private developers by the government of Arunachal Pradesh. And the outcome, so almost the projects were lying for 10 years, 12 years with the various private developers. The cost of the project increased, time lost, and no any remarkable progress could be achieved. Finally, recently, the Ministry of Power identified the problem, and these projects have been taken back from the private developers, and out of the 29 identified projects, lately again 29 projects, hydropower projects identified, and out of these 58, 13 projects have been identified that low risk hydro projects. And these 13 hydro projects now allocated in 2021 to CPSUs, 4 CPSUs, NHPC, SJVNL, TSDC, and NIPCO. So the Ministry of Power now vigorously pursuing these low risk hydro projects, and there is a need that further a tranche of other projects, so 58 minus 13, so other second low risk projects, so it should be identified and again allocated to these CPSUs, so that some work should be started on those projects also. So in that case, that is there. And as hydropower, long gestation, everybody knows various problems, construction problems, geological problems, everybody knows. So there is a need that now there is a lot of policy decisions have been taken, policy reforms have been taken by the Ministry of Power, CA, with the policy reforms, the first in 2019, hydropower policy. With that policy, now at least we have only 42 gigawatt as of now operational. We have 29 projects under construction of 14 gigawatt plus. So these projects are likely to be completed within 3-4 years. So that will give a boost to the hydro capacity addition, because since last many years there is no capacity addition in hydro sector, whereas we are going to add the renewable energy capacity addition in a large scale. So now it is need that we have to match we have to support the capacity addition from renewable energy sources by adding more and more hydro project, by adding more and more PSP. PSP only 4.7 gigawatt. So now different state governments, the hydro policy, Ministry of Power has brought the hydro power, pumped storage policy also, and further it is going to be incentivizing by the government. So we are hopeful now. As explained earlier, the private sector progress for the hydropower development was not encouraging. But now, especially for the pumped storage projects, many private developers have come forward, apart from the CPSUs like Adani, Greenco, Jindal, and other private developers, and they are also fast tracking the construction of the hydro projects. While during the uh, clearance stage, they start the construction activities with the permission from the Central Electricity Authority. They start the construction activities. So they are going to reduce the construction period of pumped storage project by 4 years to 5 years. So that is this capacity addition is going to take place for pumped storage scheme by the CPSUs and the private developer, because private developer progress is very encouraging. So in this way, because pumped storage 180 plus gigawatt capacity is there, so in various stages, pumped storage projects are there. Almost 66 gigawatt are in various stages of clearances. The statutory clearances and the policy reforms also we have to look into. The statutory clearances took a lot of time, especially the forest clearance, environment clearance, wildlife clearance, defense clearance. So many clearances are attached with the hydropower development and pump storage scheme. So these are the areas where we have to work, and I think Ministry of Power, along with the Central Electricity Authority, working very closely, and they are working in this direction. So results will come. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bishna? Mr. Bishna, would you like to add, uh, being a CPSU and being also at the forefront of installing projects, what recommendations are there in order to help capacity addition being on track?
Thank you, Mr. Nyogi. In fact, there can't be a better time to discuss this particular topic, what we are discussing today. Scaling up the hydropower, in fact, the process is already started. In the last, I would say, few years' time, maybe 3 to 4 years' time, government has done a lot to push this sector, and there has been several policy interventions through which this sector is being pushed forward. And now most of the challenges and the difficulties in hydro sector have been addressed by the government. See, the initially conventional difficulties what we used to talk few years back was like the law and order issues, the contractual disputes, the technical challenges, and then many more. Now, one after the other, I think the government has tried to resolve each and every issue by setting up separate mechanisms, appropriate mechanisms. What I'm seeing in the last couple of years, at least, that these things have really been very it has been giving a very positive result, and the projects are now doing very well on the ground. hydro projects, particularly the projects which have already taken off and they are in the construction stage. Hardly any difficulties are there, in uh, carrying out the construction efficiently there at the project sites. There are still one or two challenges left as far as hydro project execution is concerned. Of course, the one is because by the very nature of the hydro project activities during construction, the decisions, technical decisions are huge in nature. The financial implication is also huge. So sometimes, the decision making becomes a tedious task, a task which normally is not done at the right time, at the appropriate time, and which leads to delays in completion of the projects. Now, this is something where, government has to further strengthen the mechanisms uh, appropriately by maybe by setting up some kind of a uniform sort of a technical competent team which can across the board, across the organizations and across the sector, can advise the developers, hydro project developers, on serious technical challenges. Because when we talk about hydro projects, we normally talk about the surprises, the geological surprises, the surprises which are technical in nature, but not all of them are surprises. Some of these situations arise because of out of ignorance, or maybe sometimes out of uh, fear of in taking a decision of this particular magnitude. So if this kind of mechanism can be put in place where the this particular aspect of taking decisions of this magnitude or this nature are taken without any difficulty, then maybe we can support these projects in a big way. That is one. Otherwise, as far as scaling up the hydro capacity is concerned, the way it is going at the moment, I think it is in the next 5 to 7 years, we'll see a good progress in this particular sector. PSP is a very uh, important dimension of this hydro sector now, and the way the kind of addition of renewable power is being done, and most of these renewable power projects have not been even hooked up with the grid. The day they are all hooked up with the grid, will really see the difficulties we'll face in the grid. But we really have to, I mean, we saw the presentation also in the beginning of the session. We really have to see that how we can make these PSPs, an attractive proposition. Because today we are compensating only one sort of a one benefit of the project, and the revenue stream of these PSPs is only through the capacity contracts. So you are selling the capacity of the PSP, you are having a capacity contract with some discoms, and it's the discom which is paying for all kinds of benefits which are accruing out of this particular PSP project. See, the PSP, once it is hooked up with the grid, it gives a lot of advantages, gives a lot of benefits to the grid. But those benefits are not monetized. Those benefits are not being compensated in either to the developer nor to the agency who has contracted the capacity of the PSP. What I can see is we are going to complete one PSP of 1000 megawatt, 250 megawatt, 4 machines, and in next 4 to 5 months we'll be adding this capacity to the grid. The kind of huge advantage and benefits it will bring to the grid stability. I mean, this 1000 megawatt capacity, but the entire cost of the PSP asset is being borne by the discoms with whom we are having the capacity contracts. Now, this is something which is not justifiable. We have to really find out certain things, certain mechanisms in the regulatory setup by which we can try to monetize the other benefits to the grid, and then try to reduce the cost and reduce the burden of this particular uh, the kind of load shifting on the discoms. because discoms use PSPs only for the load shifting. So this is one, of course, very, very important thing, that we have to develop some kind of market products, through which we can make these PSPs beneficial and also very, very attractive. The second, of course, there has to be a regional kind of a study, because there are large variations in the requirements of uh, you know addressing the variability of the renewable projects which are attached with the grid, regional grids, and now it's one grid, so it has or not all the assets have been connected with the grid. So region wise, we have to make an assessment as to what is the requirement of the renewable energy assets which need to be connected with the grid. Second, what is the storage requirement and the PSP storage requirement which uh, particularly are required for that particular region, because there are large variations in this. Now, whenever we go to the states and we talk about this requirement of PSP, and particularly the storage requirements for that particular state, not all the states are appreciating this particular requirement. Now, because the variations are huge, because they are not facing the wrath of the problem at the moment, because not all the assets, they are basically uh, not allowing the uh, renewable projects to get connected with the grid and then spoil the grid. So that, I mean, that is something which at the state level has to be addressed. Region wise, we have to make an assessment of the kind of storage requirements, of the kind of demand and supply gaps, and then during the day, of course, and then hourly requirements, day ahead requirements, and sometimes even the seasonal requirements also, if the capacity of the PSP, storage capacity of PSP is large enough, to store the water for some kind of seasonal variations also. So now the time has come that we have to really take lessons from the countries who are already trying to address such issues at their level. United States, there, this particular issue of adding PSP capacity, storage capacity to their grid based on their regional requirements, they have already been, fighting this problem, and then most of it has already been addressed. Now we have to start doing it now, because at the moment we are basically going to add huge capacity, solar and wind capacity to the grid. So we'll be facing that problem. That is one. Second, there is one more aspect of the PSP which is very important as far as the cost of PSP is concerned. We normally use machines in PSP plant as fixed synchronous speed machines, but now the adjustable synchronous machine for the grid support is the recommendation, and basically world over they are trying to change from fixed synchronous to adjustable synchronous machine.
So,
Now
Mr.
this adjustable synchronous machine,
Mr.
it
Bisnaik,
involves 7 to 10% more capital cost. Yeah. So this cost basically is for the grid support. So Discom is not going to get the advantage of it. Now someone has to compensate for this cost. So this is the kind of these are some of the issues which need to be addressed when we talk about adding more PSP capacity to the grid. So this is another challenge which we need to address.
Thank you, Mr. Vishnu. We can always come back to you later. So let me now turn to my industry colleagues, and let me first ask Nitin that you are also at the forefront of setting up hydro projects. So my very specific query to you, that what regulatory support and bespoke government interventions you think are necessary? What are the instruments that should be brought into the picture, and how do we step up the capacity additions?
Thank you, Chair. I again maybe like to reinforce the points which has already been made. I'll not dwell deep, but just to give a quick snippet of what we feel as an industry would be required. So there are two fronts, two way approach has to be there. One led by the policy, another with your permission, I'll just also like to touch on the market element because there has to be self-sustainable growth in this. Specific to PSP, if we talk about on the policy side, uh, Honorable Chairman CA in his opening remark mentioned a very interesting slide, data point that majority of the storage, I'm being agnostic to duration, majority of the storage is coming post 2030. So the incentive and the policy support would be required for to enable and fuel the capacity which is coming post 2030. However, incentives like ISTS waiver, which is currently restricted to June 25, may not be in a position to add value or offer value or maybe enough incentive for the capacities which are there. That if going by the data, almost from 2030 to 2047, there's a 6x growth we are looking at. So that's point number one. And of course, it is something which is inevitable. You need the kind of growth numbers, 1600 gigawatts of renewable is we are trying to add in a 2 decades. So it would require a special treatment, like we have spoken about. I'll not go deep. So all the incentives in form of capital subsidies and exemption on the water availability is something which is there. On the operational side, again, on the policy side, is ease of the norms when it comes to structuring the whole PSP, SPV. It should be relaxed norm because you need to bring in a lot more investors. It has to be investor friendly from that point of view. And maybe the last element on the policy side would be how do we deal with this right of first refusal? Because it's a storage, not an energy, whether it should be there, if it has to be there, then in what way or form, at what point of time that needs to be exercised. I think the deck talks about in detail. I'll just quickly, maybe another 30 seconds, with your permission, Chair. I'd like to talk about the market-based approach. I think this is more important because it is high time now that the market products and intervention should happen now rather than following the capacity. It should not happen. We have seen in the case of renewables that the renewable integration started and then the market product came, like green day-ahead market or the green market and the real-time market. I think we should not be doing the same thing for PSP. I think it's right time. We should have all those market-based interventions right now. Let the capacity follow. Let the market participant developers like us has that confidence on the market offering. It could be uh, I think clear example is the ancillary market, which still is pending for the primary and the secondary reserve. I think tertiary we have, but not enough liquidity. So I think that's one thing which will help. Also the capacity market, because these are storage capacity, these are warehouses. So I think a fully functional, effective, efficient capacity market will also play a very important role in this. Innovative product, I won't call it as innovative. It's a very standard product across the world. Is a contract for difference, just to ensure that the interests of the developers are safeguarded and there is a mechanism to compensate through that. And also, whatever market mechanism we talk about, we understand that PSP or for that matter, any storage technology has that element of carbon neutrality. So there has to be a compensation through any of these for all the market-based instruments. So with this, I'll submit. Maybe happy to have any follow-up on this later. Thank you.
So thanks, Nitin. And may I now ask Mr. Naresh Telgu from Adani, to give his thoughts on how does he think that the project development should be expedited and approvals and clearances can be fast tracked, and what are the bottlenecks he sees or he's facing in terms of capacity additions which he is targeting.
Thank you, Mr. Nyogi, and good afternoon, all. Actually, we are dealing in all aspects of development for PSPs, and some aspects from allotment aspects till development, there are lots and lots of issues in many aspects of the development process. I can just give one, two examples, such as in one state, we were trying to get the policy advocacy done that the PSPs should be allotted on, especially the off-stream closed loop PSP should be allotted on a nominated basis so that it should not happen what happened to hydros in private sector, what Mr. NHP's chairman or MD has told, that they were pitted one against another, and free power for some of the projects was exceeding 40%, 36. How can the private sector develop those? I mean, I'm sure that the project allotted to NHPC does not have more than 13% of free power. And that also we are talking of staggering it. The state government came up with a policy and allotted a nominated basis, but put in a point that outside the state, if you sell, you will have to give 30 paise to the state. So, I mean, you are running at the pole to get all this done. And then when you come up with the policy, you are again gone to square one. So these are some of the aspects that I am telling. In some of the states where we are developing, your allotted water allotment is there, and you give as the industrial rate, it's more than 30, 35 crores. You have to give upfront the money for allotment, and you have to draw down within 3 years. I mean, and they say that there's a government resolution, we cannot do anything out of. Now, if even the construction period is 4 years, how can you draw down in 3 years? So, I mean, these are some of the aspects of practical development. And like we run to the CA and Ministry of Power like our godfathers, then asking them to help us. And up till now, they have really supported us in getting this through. There are other aspects of battery and PSPs where I think both complement each other for a short term and near the customer, which you don't have to go through the transmission line. The battery would definitely serve that purpose of a short duration storage. PSP on a long duration energy storage actually has no competition currently. In the CA theme song, I heard that the Atmanirbhar came almost 6 times in the CA theme song. And when we always compare between a battery and a PSP, you need to check as to where we are going. So I want those numbers in the targets reversed from 334 battery to 181 PSP, and I think we all here want to see that reversed as well. So
Thank
you.
Thank you. Mr. Bansal, on the same subject.
Yeah, thank you, Nyogi ji, and good afternoon, everybody. One thing I wanted to stress was everybody, whether developers, policymakers, whosoever are, need to understand clearly that PSP is not a generating station. In fact, it is a storage. So the policies required for storage, considering it as a water battery and equating with other battery systems. So those policies need to be applied and declare it as an industry and not the policies mainly applicable for hydropower projects to be made applicable, considering it working on the principles of the hydropower, but not a generating station, storage part of it. So with that, in case we apply those policies, where my friend, he has already told some of the policies being applied like upfront premium, water cess, and free power, etc. With that, definitely these are going to get unviable, and the targets which we are setting and the direction which we are moving forward will not be going to serve the purpose. So that is the one main thing. And secondly, for taking up the projects in a right earnest and for clearing of the detailed project reports at a faster rate by the Central Electricity Authority. Although some guidelines have recently been issued in July to expedite the formulation of the DPRs and clearances. In addition to that, so my submission would be that some of the mandatory checklist that needs to be reviewed so that a checklist be prepared for tests which are inevitable, and some of the tests and investigations which can be taken to the post DPR stage so that formulation as well as the examination of DPRs for techno-economic clearance are not delayed. For an example, the modeling of dam with computation flow dynamics or numerical studies, these can be taken to the post DPR stage. Similarly, dam break analysis, which now it has been imposed to be submitted before the TEC, although that is done for the environment impact studies, and whenever it's ready, that will be submitted, but should not be made as a mandatory for giving the TEC. And similarly, some standardization of the checklist is required, wherein some designs and investigations works which are required to be taken at the post DPR stage and can serve purpose, that needs to be dropped. And other some critical tests like triaxial, large scale triaxial test, for which we are having very limited equipment in the country, only available with CSMRS. And in case the way we are targeting to develop pump storage projects, there will be a beeline of the projects for those tests, and which will going to take a long time and ultimately delay in formulation of the DPRs and economic clearances.
Mr. Bansal, will come back to you. Just if you
Yeah,
can
for
quickly
that
wrap
matter,
up.
then some alternative needs to be designed by the CEA so that either that can be got done or it can be taken to the post DPR stage. Similarly, some tests in the drifts also. And some of the seismic parameter studies we have been carrying out in the region for a particular project. I think that can be applied for the other projects also in that region, instead of all the projects separately going for those seismic study parameters. And one or two more points regarding environmental clearances and forest clearances, just to expedite it. One thing is notification of the eco-sensitive zone of the wildlife sanctuaries where some implementation of the PSPs are coming and falling within 10 kilometers. That needs to be expedited. Otherwise, taking clearances in the eco-sensitive zone may take long time. Similarly, for certification of the distance of the project from the boundary of the nearest wildlife sanctuary, that having been presented by the developer through KML, KMZ file should be accepted instead of asking for certification from the forest authorities, because that is clearly visible on that. But these are the small issues which have been delaying enormously in
Mr. Bansal, we have
preparing
to.
of this document.
I request you to wrap up a little
Okay,
more
and
because
one more point, just
we
only.
have, Mr. Bansal, once again, we have 15 minutes for other panelists.
Fine,
so
fine.
Please wrap up now.
Sure. One point was the main point is CA land. I have to make a request that the CA land, which is required to be handed over in lieu of the forest land to be diverted for the projects, should be done away with, and the cost which is required for the compensation of afforestation, that should be standardized to be taken from the developers instead of every developer going for compensatory forest land to be handed. Thank you. Thank you very
Thank you, Mr. Bansal. In the interest of time, may I now request Mr. Gyanbhadra Kumar from JSW to narrate his experience on setting up pump storage projects, because just today I think we had the news that you have entered into a 40-year capacity contract in the state of Maharashtra. And again, in the interest of time, I'll request After Mr. Kumar finishes, Mr. Nanda to come in on your experience of setting up pump storage projects. The common refrain we have that is, what is the business model you think is going to work for PSPs? So over to you, Mr. Kumar, and then after that, Ms. Please be brief. We have been told we have just about 15 minutes. We have to cover other panelists as well.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Niyogi. So the way we look at it, I think pump storage projects, they are in a very, very sweet spot. We see very exciting times for pump storage because there is all round demand for pump storage, for storage. So, so because of this, we are in a very, very exciting phase. And if you see this planning from CA or Government of India, right now from 4.7 gigawatt, we plan to become almost 30 to 40 gigawatt in next 5 to 10 years. So that puts a lot of pressure on all the pump storage project sector as a whole. If you just look at the scenario, almost 30 to 40 projects, because every size of a pump storage project is 1000 megawatt. So becomes 40 projects will be developed simultaneously. So that puts a lot of stress on the capacity in terms of engineering, capacity in terms of the construction ability, and capacity in terms of the uh, uh, vendor development. Because if you see in the past, hydro have been developed at a very placid pace, few projects at one time. So that was making our life very, very easy. But 20 to 30 projects, 40 projects simultaneously being developed. So it will put a lot of stress. And our challenge in future days is going to be on the engineering, is going to be on the vendor development, is going to be on the construction capability. Because pump storage projects compared to the hydro, we have to deliver in 3 to 4 years' time. Please mind it, hydro has been developed over a period of 5 to 10 years or beyond. But pump storage, there is an expectation from the Government of India. There is a concrete planning to develop in a short span of period of 3 to 4 years. So it puts a lot of stress and lot of focus on this internal planning and capacity building. The way we look at it, what Mr. Niyogi, I would like to share with you. Last year, Karnataka government, they came out for a long-term purchase of power from pump storage. This year, Maharashtra government, they have just concluded almost 3 gigawatt of long-term power purchase of for a 40 years. And right now, while we are talking, there is another tender, long-term tender going on by a northern state. So the way we look at it, there will be many more such tenders coming for pump storage. So challenge would be for all private players as well as for PSUs to come to that, to that level and develop and deliver. So the biggest challenge for pump storage, I think, apart from this initial approval stage, pre-construction phase, that remains. But I think CA and other government departments, they are doing a great role. CA, CWC, GSI, they have been tremendously supporting and guiding this pump storage drive. But the real challenge will happen when we have to deliver this project, when we, create those capacity building, and that's going to be the real thing. And the way look at it, I think there will be many more PPAs or tenders will be coming, and it's going to be very exciting, very challenging for especially pump storage sector or professionals. There has not been a good time like this, and another 10 years are going to be very, very exciting. Thank you, Mr. Niyogi.
Thank
I
you.
think I have
Yeah.
said what I wanted to say.
Yeah, Mr. Nanda.
Yeah, thank you. See, I am looking at a situation slightly from different perspective. As of now, I think all issues regarding clearance or policy matters of PSP development for a duration around 5 to 6 hours are more or less flagged, and the government is judiciously working on those things. Many things have happened, I think, and rest are in place, will be done shortly. But what I am seeing the situation in context of the geographical context of our country, we are going to be a solar-rich country. So the need for our future-ready PSPs, I think that's the area where we need to put our thought now. Future ready means that we'll be having a charging cycle of around say 7 hours, and discharging needs might be 10 to 12 hours.
So what does it mean to us? It means to us that the pump storage projects might need to be oversized. And those kind of stipulations nobody will do unless until the sector is incentivized in a proper direction. So I think looking forward, going with the need that we will be having very small wind available, we need RERTC for our hydrogen projects. I think that is the area where we need to conceptualization of the projects for future ready PSPs is an area which needs greater attention at this point of time. Idea is that how do we make RERTC, as Mr. Chairperson said in the morning, that we need to make available RERTC as a reasonable price to hydrogen. I think that's again, there's a need that we go with the either CFD or the normative tariff also for a certain percentage of the project capacity, which will enable a stable pricing for a prime sector like hydrogen, as well as mitigate a risk to an extent where the lenders are looking to finance the projects. So I think these are the two gray areas where we need to put our thought for making future ready projects. One, how do we size our projects looking at our geographical needs with solar intensive? And second point, when we conceptualize those projects, how do we incentivize those specific need based projects, so that we can have most of the projects ready for the future? As of now, if we look at, we have around 100 projects in pipeline and all are 6 hours of storage. So we are not thinking of beyond 2032. We need to think about 2047 and maybe 2070. I think that's where I think we need to put our thought. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nanda, for being very brief. And we need to be, because I find that the hall is getting emptier. So let me turn to Mr. Mahalik first, and then, of course, our last panelist on the from the industry side, Mr. Kale. Uh, you have kind of a double role in the sense that you are developing hydropower. You are also in the business of power distribution. I mean, at the corporate level. So how do you think, the PSP, the hydro and the PSP models should be re-engineered in terms of designing capacity contracts which discoms can enter into? And do you think that there is a case for the system operator also to contract some of the capacities in the backdrop of energy transition, so that we have a vibrant ancillary market developed? And if so, what should be the monetization principles? But very briefly, please, because we have other panelists to cover whom I have kept waiting. So my apologies.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. I'm representing Torrent Power, who is into almost 5.1 gigawatt at the moment, and we're planning almost 10 to 12 PSP to develop. To answer your question, thank you, Niyogi sir. Yes, we are into generation, we are into transmission, and we are into distribution, all three segment of power. And I'm thankful to the chairperson, Mr. Ghanshyam Prasad and Pankaj Agrawal, wherein we have interacted in past. For this industry, we have actually, this is a result. This is a continuous phenomena, basically. This is a continuous phenomena, and I am talking on behalf of Torrent in the context of PSP only. How PSP will be sustainable, basically. PSP can only be sustainable. There is a daunting task with us, almost 175 gigawatt, almost relating to 100 and more than 150 numbers of the project, PSP. Earlier, in those days, 200, 300, I am into this field since last 4 decades. I have seen everything in my life throughout my journey. And I'm thankful to Mr. Bishnoi, who is here, CMD of this PSDC, wherein probably that was the 5th project. Today you are seeing 5 gigawatt of PSP. Now our plan to go right up to 170 gigawatt. So this PSP is a second PSP theory, 1000 megawatt PSP, wherein I have contributed some role through SCC when I was working in SCC. And before that, Purulia was there, and some other 3-4 projects are there. So right now, our approach should be, I'm broadly dividing into 3 parts, basically, with your permission, sir. In 3 minutes, I'll conclude this thing. Number one, how quickly we can accomplish our DPR task. What I could find in the DPR itself, there are a lot of series activities. So we have to identify those series activity, how best we can change into um, parallel activity, basically, not at the cost of your safety, not at the cost of your quality. We have interacted so many things in here, not many things can go parallel. So those things are to be accomplished in parallel way without compromising the quality and safety and other standard. There are a lot of means, and as you said rightly, sir, we can, this is not the time to integrate those area. Probably after 10 or 12, when that comfort level comes, maybe after 3-4 years. I have been associated with three PSP in a row. I'm lucky. So I can cite mine this thing after maybe 10 or 12 years, which is going to happen in next 4-5 years, with a gap of 3 years, because after Pinapuram and after MP30 and other things, there will be a gap, because a lot of things have to be happened, supposed to be happened, not happen. There is no blame to anyone. It is a combined effort of everyone, basically. So we have to understand what is closed loop, what is open loop, what is this thing, and we have to make this sizing of the when we are running parallelly all these things. Civil ECI concept should be there. Earlier, ECI concept was not there. When I say ECI, it is early involvement of contractor. Could be your civil contractor, could be your E&M contractor. Both the agencies should be inducted at an early stage, so that we can save in the process. We can save our time, basically, so that we can, the main result can happen. Maybe Pinapuram, it is happening in next 3.5 to 4 years. It is happening. Second project maybe 3 years. So all this project can happen, provided all collective effort, right from government to this thing is happening. Then only it can only happen. So GST now it is 18%. It is a big thing. So for sustainability and for viability, GST should be reduced to 5%. If it is not reduced, because it has to go to council, and it is a massive decision from government of India. So it should be 5 to 12% or something like that, or on actual composition, it should, right now you can flag it at 5% with actual composition. Supposing I'm opting for a concrete dam, then definitely I have to give the GST and this thing. So that thing should be there. GST optimization, percentage of GST should be drastically reduced, and DPR, it should be curtailed. The time should be, at the same time, we should align ourselves to the financial institution. Right now, they are not comfortable with this kind of arrangement. So that is most important thing. How best we can get there comfortable, that is most important. Probably that is the need of the hour. With that, I can conclude. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Kale.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Yogi. I would like to just add what Mr. Malik said. Uh, First thing is about model capacity contracts. No, if as per the resource adequacy plan, if the discoms are obligated to enter into some model capacity contracts, it will help discoms as well as the developers, especially in terms of planning the capacity addition, because it will give a lot of clarity amongst the developers as well as discoms, that for the developers, they would know that how much capacity is being required by what time. They can plan their resources accordingly, the capacity addition also. So that will go in sync with the discoms requirement. Second thing is monetization of the ancillary services. Again, this is one topic which is not talked about much, though there are regulations, especially for reactive support, compensation for reactive support. But again, the implementation is an issue. If we have to optimize the cost of storage, especially the pumped storage, then monetization of ancillary services being offered by the PSPs should be looked into seriously. That will help all the stakeholders, the developers, the discoms, as well as the system operators. Because even for the system operators, they need to tackle this issue of variable renewable capacity addition. Now, who can provide that support in terms of reactive support, spinning reserve, black start capabilities, It's only the storage, pumped storage. So if the monetization is done properly, then it will help developers also to optimize the cost and then plan accordingly. That will also help the system operators to plan and integrate the PSPs into the grid.
Thank you.
And one more thing, of course, I will take this opportunity to compliment and many congratulations to CA for this 50 years of journey. And of course, the journey continues. I have seen CA being so proactive. Last more than a year, I have been interacting with them, and they have come up with number of amendments to the policies. They reach out to other ministries also, be it the GSI, CSMRS, or the MOEFCC, and bring in required amendments to speed up the clearances. Just one more aspect, recently there has been a discussion initiated by MOP about who should give the clearances to PSPs, up to what capacity, up to what capital cost, the project should be given to states, beyond which capacity it should go to the CA. I would like to just, give a word of caution that before concluding on this matter, they should also see, especially the CA, should look at the resources available with the states. Whether do they have the adequate resources to assess these projects and clear it in time? That's very important. Second thing is, will the states be consistent with whatever policies or the assessment process CA has developed? Otherwise, for the developers, for the customers, for the consultants, as well as for the procurers, it will create a lot of confusion because many of the developers are developing PSPs in multiple states. Consultants have been providing services for multiple developers. That will create some confusion. That should not be there.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have to, basically send continuous signals, for speakers to draw to a close. My apologies. Mrs. Let's now turn back to the states and see, listen to their perspective. Mrs. Mishra, how do you see policy cohesion taking place? Between the state and the center, number one. Number two, how do you think, the stakeholders should be engaged in order to maximize the societal benefits that would be the outcome of a hydro and a PSP project? So on this, if you can throw some light, again, my request is to be very brief. We are already overshot the time and I have still 2 or 3 more speakers to cover. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nyogi.
Yeah.
I think I am audible. Yeah. No? Now I'm audible? Yeah. So I'm very specific regarding Odisha. So Odisha has maximum, I think, a vulnerable state in the due to the CPP, and the potentiality of PSP is much more, as grid is yet not fully, that has immense power. It is not fully saturated. And regarding the problems, I can say that we can, for this policy, center state policy, I will highlight only 2 to 3 main points. That is one, we can say environment clearance. For that, presently, environment clearance, one second. That is very cumbersome, and that should not be treated at par with conventional hydros. So for PSPs, we must relax the cumbersomeness of environmental clearance, and the impact of PSPs on environment is less than large hydro. For that also, we have to make less cumbersome. Then for forest clearance, uh, existing forest clearance, that reservoirs and off river side may be treated as separate category for processing of forest clearance. Then policy should be made so that developer only has to deposit required amount to the forest department against compensatory afforestation. The identification, demarcation, DGPA survey and acquisition of forest land should be done by the forest department. That will be better. Then our main problem is for Odisha, I can say that interstate clearance. As PSP does not affect much like large hydro, so interstate clearance should not be a big hindrance. Instead of taking that clearance from other states, only the neighboring states should be intimated about the project. If there is any problem, then it can be
Okay.
solved. So I think Odisha is the one of the state which has separate RE policy, and by December also for private PSP developers with much intensity, it is developing another PSP policy. So I think if we'll capitalize all these points, then PSP is very
Okay.
much necessary and good for Odisha.
Thank you. Thank you. So let me request Mr. Kulshrestha. Okay. See, one subject we haven't discussed is the impact of e-flow, which is now a policy direction of maintaining at least 30% during the monsoon season, but it's round the year following a graded trajectory. So how do you think that should be countered or that should be overcome, or what kind of benefits or compensation would be necessary? And two, is there a way of revisiting the business model in terms of escalating costs so that the first time impact is low? So, Mr. Kulshrestha.
Thank you, Mr. Nyogi. Basically, the points which you have raised, they are directly impacting the tariff of a power project. So e-flow was basically put into place by MOEF in 2015, wherein it was said that 20% will be released in the dry season, 20 to 30% in the lean season, and 30% in the monsoon season. Later on, another order came which said that it has to be between 20 to 30%. And finally, in 2018, especially for Ganga River Basin projects, these uh, the, 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 the measurements have been clearly spelled out as 20, 25, and 30. Ultimately, it works out to be a loss of almost 12% in the terms of energy. So, what the developers are interested in, that environment should definitely be protected. And it has been well said by the NMCG, the NGT, and the MOEF, as well as the MOJS. But ultimately, the 12% loss in generation is impacting the tariff, thereby enhancing the traffic tariff. So, as far as the modeling is concerned, maybe the government of India can consider a VGF funding for the e-flow, which is mandated by the law to be released by each of the developers. So it could be of the range of 1.25 crore per megawatt, so that while we are modeling and we are getting an advantage from the government of India in terms of the loss which we are likely to incur through the e-flows which are being released, the the appropriate compensation is available. The other point regarding tariff reduction could be the government of India proposal itself given in 2019, which was regarding the escalating tariff of 2%. It has been talked of in many of the forums, but finally it has not come to the right place, and it has not been mandated as yet. So if we put that 2% escalating tariff phenomena in place, it will definitely bring the first year tariff by almost 25%. And if it is increased to 4%, we can reduce the first year tariff by almost 40%. So these are the 2 points which can play an important role while modeling. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Let me turn to Mr. Ghosh. We have kept you waiting. Sorry. Uh, one of the risks, and if not that the major risk the hydro projects face, is of geology.
Yes,
So
you have rightly
and
pointed out.
and just to uh, supplement what I have tried to ask is, do you think that there is a case for drawing up a baseline geology when a project is identified, so that while negotiating the contract, some of the risk can be addressed and mitigated?
Yes, you have rightly pointed out this point. Let me tell you from the Geological Survey of India's perspective that we have to help this sector. We have now extended our infrastructure in such a manner that our regions and state units are also now involved in the appraisal process. So around 20 very competent team are working. Even our the engineering project evaluation office at New Delhi also we have enhanced its capacity. This is what we have done from the Geological Survey of India to help the power sector to meet these challenges. But we have some issues to discuss with you. The first one is that a lot of baseline data on a regional scale are already available, which are freely downloadable from the GSI site. Uh, our 1 is to 50,000 scale geological map, it's a very comprehensive data. It is available. You can utilize that when you are preparing or studying some sort of a preliminary analysis of a project, when you are thinking of taking up some projects. Then our seismotectonic atlas, which has recently been updated, you use those data because what we understand that unlike the HEPs of earlier time, there were lot of feasibility studies and reconnaissance studies were done earlier. But in case of PSPs, all projects are coming as a new projects where the background informations are less. So that is a big challenge. That's why we always stress on the investigations. Now the challenge with you, the developer, is that now the regional scale data are available, but you have to put more trained manpower to generate the large scale geological data maps, and you have to do the investigation simultaneously. Simultaneously means I wanted to tell you that you have to have the drilling, subsurface explorations, other surface mapping, everything of different opportunity sites together. Sometimes it is being seen that these were done sequentially, but you do not have the time, and we also do not have the time. That challenge is there. And the most important thing, we see the investigations not in terms of the clearance of the DPR. We see the investigation, the very important point Mr. Ganbhadra Kumar has told, that success of PSP lies also in a large manner how you ably construct that project during the construction stage. That is a big challenge. We are not discussing that challenge very much. I am very happy that Mr. Kumar has raised that issues. And another thing is that in the investigation also, please try to infuse more technology. Technology infusion is very much required. You know that in the underground structures, the drift or edits are required, but we are also now thinking that it can be done with the help of seismic tomography, preferably using cross-hole tomography. So at least two minimum boreholes you have to drill, and you have to do some sort of a cross-hole tomography to see the underground pictures. Because you see, we if we get a very completed DPR in our hand, then we don't think that we will require more than a month's time maximum to clear this project. So problem lies when the investigation is insufficient. And another point I just wanted to tell you, that perhaps you people have a very good consultant at the headquarter of yours, but the people who are actually working on the ground level geoscientists and engineers, they are not that trained, and they don't have that much of capacity. So you have to think of, and if you need any help from Geological Survey of India, and I'm telling to CE also, if you want any bespoke training program to be conducted in collaboration of GSI, we are always there.
Thank you. Thank you. I mean, we that ends on a positive note. Rahul, one or two quick remarks, given the limited time we have.
Thank you. I think a lot has been said, and I also had said quite a lot. But what I kind of think as an overarching thing is we are too much regulated at this point in time. If we have to kind of go on a long-term perspective, ramping up the capacities both in the private sector, state sectors, and CPSUs, I think a lot of deregulation has to happen, whether it's in terms of approvals and clearances or in terms of market mechanisms. There has to be some directional approach, whether we want to have a regulated market going forward and still look for contracts which have PPAs, or probably we want the market to function on its own, where the risk is with the developer or with the entity itself. So that's my kind of take. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Rahul. Mr. Gokhale, some closing remarks from you after having sat through patiently through the discussion.
I just wanted to tell regarding the e-flow, because it's a policy and the law of the land. There are two conditions basically. It is very simple to say that it results into a loss of 12%, because when the projects are made in a manner where there is a dam toe powerhouse, the um, the turbine is allowed to run continuously for a day. So actually there is no loss, because that water actually e-flow, whatever it is going through the turbine. My alternate suggestion is, whenever you have a project, and many projects are there which have a long water conductor system, in that case, the power station is far away from the dam or the barrage. There you make a dam to projects, and even if the capacity is say more than 25 megawatts, there one can have 12% free power should not be applicable. So that can help in a big way.
Okay. So what you're suggesting is a trade-off. It's a trade-off between. Okay, so that's a daily. So I think that brings us close to the discussion, and thank you all the panelists for sitting through the session for 1.5 hours. Time has been short; it has been curtailed, because we started late. In terms of concluding remarks, few things I would like to flag. There is indeed a need for a new market design to accommodate the construction of hydro and PSPs. And as one of the panelists had very emphatically said that although the capacity addition is there on the canvas, the market intervention, the design part of it has to start now. To we do consider PSP as one of the finest resources for long duration energy storage. So hence, in order to support the development of PSPs, we would need new business models, we would need model capacity contracts, we would possibly need the design of a capacity market. Third, we have all seen that hydro and PSPs are somewhat at a cost disadvantage compared to other RE sources. So there could be a case for VGF support or in the form of CFD support to ensure that hydro and PSP resources are as dispatchable as other RE sources in the day-ahead market. So I think those are the bit of a framework we have tried to arrive at. We have also seen the impact of e-flow on the viability of hydro projects, and we have seen the final suggestion from the member himself that it's a double whammy, that it's both the hydro projects face both the impact of e-flow as well as 12% free power. So whether that could be a trade-off. And last but not the least, even in the context of free power, the suggestion from the industry has always been that can it be staggered, or can it be stepped up from 1 to 12% in the 12th year, or can it be backloaded, because otherwise the tariff becomes front loaded. And last but not the least, the suggestion that the annual 2% escalation could reduce the year one tariff by as much as 25% is very much part of the policy document, but it is yet to be implemented. With those few words, let me bring the session to a close. We know that we have overshot the time because we had an array of experts and panelists who had viewed their perspective. And thank you, audience, for being with us for the last 1.5 hours. Thank you.
Indeed, an array of panelists and diverse perspectives presented to help us understand the topic scaling up hydropower and harnessing PSP potential Vision 2047 better. And now, we'd like to express our gratitude towards our panelists, our moderator, and we'd request Shri M.G. Gokhale, Member Hydro of Central Electricity Authority, to honor our panelists. First up, our moderator, we'd request him to present our token of appreciation to our moderator, Shri Prabir Neogi. Let's applaud at our loudest. We have Shri R.K. Bishnoi, Chairman and Managing Director, Teri Hydro Development Corporation Limited, being felicitated. Ms. Nibedita Mishra, we were joined by her, Special Secretary, Department of Energy, Government of Odisha. Shri Pankaj Kulshrestha, Executive Director, Uttarakhand Jal Vidyut Nigam Limited, joined us with his 2 cents. As mentioned earlier, we had both government and industry perspective. We also had Shri Naresh Telugu, COO Hydro and PSP Adani Group. Also joining us was Shri Gyan Bhadra Kumar, Whole-Time Director, JSW Hydro. Our panelists are showing a lot of energy. Members of the audience will have to match up as they applause for our panelists. Shri Rahul Vashne, former country head, StatCraft and advisor, ASSOCHAM National Council on Hydropower and PSP. Shri Nitin Sabiki, Senior Vice President and Head Hydro and Energy Markets Renew. Shri PM Nanda, Executive Vice President, Greenco Group, also joined us with his insights. We also had the pleasure of hearing Shri Kalachand Mahalik, Head Hydro and PSP Torrent Power. Shri Mahalik also joining us. We also had Shri Som Prakash Bansal, Head Projects, Hydro and PSP Avada Group. And Shri Prabhakar Sikale, Head Hydro and PSP Tata Power. Let's hear it for Shri Kale. And now we invite on stage Ms. Kavita Sharma, Additional Director and Head Energy and Infra, ASSOCHAM, to present our token of appreciation to Shri M.G. Gokhale. Shri Gokhale was doing the honors, and now time for us to present him with this memento. And now time for the group picture, for us to capture this moment for eternity. The stage here standing testimony to a really insightful discussion on a very pertinent industry topic.
This was the MOU to be sent. Please witness.
And last but not the least, a reminder, PFC Consulting Limited, PFCCL, a wholly owned subsidiary of Power Finance Corporation Limited, possesses vast experience in consultancy services, providing end-to-end consulting solutions consistent with long-term